Okay, so here we are again. We are in this video covering, again, from A Course of Love, and I'm just going to read a little bit from this, okay? Your real self is the Christ in you. How could it be anything but love, or see with eyes other than those of love? Would you expect any decent human being to look on a loveless world, on misery and despair, and not be moved? Think not that those who seem to add to the world's misery are exception. There is not a soul that walks this earth that does not weep at what it sees. Yet the Christ in you does not weep, for the Christ in you sees with eyes of love. The difference is, the eyes of love see not the misery or despair. They are not there. This is the miracle. The miracle is true seeing. Think not that love can look on misery and see love there. Love looks not on misery at all. Compassion is not what you have made of it. The Bible instructs you to be compassionate as God is compassionate. You have defined it unlike the compassion of God. To believe God looks upon misery and responds with sympathy and concern and does not end the misery is to believe in a God who is compassionate as you are compassionate. You think you would end misery if you could, beginning with your own, and yet you could no more end misery by making it real than God could. There is no magic here of turning misery into delight and pain into joy. These acts would indeed be magic, an illusion on top of an illusion. You have but accepted illusion as the truth, and so seek other illusions to change what never was into something that never will be. To be compassionate as God is compassionate is to see as God sees. Again, I stress to you, this is not about looking upon misery and saying to yourself, you see it not. I am not an advocate of heartlessness, but wholeheartedness. If you believe even the tiniest fraction of what is true, if you but believe, you are a small part of God, no bigger than a pinprick of light in a daunting sun. You still cannot believe in the reality of misery and despair. If you do, you believe this is the state of God as well. And if this were true, what hope would there be for misery's end? What light would there be in the universe that could end the darkness? Okay. I'm going to stop there and we're going to get into this just a little bit, okay? So I have spoken this many times from a different point of view, slightly different point of view, and that's where I'm going to come from to begin this bit of explanation here. I have said to people who are not really familiar with this concept, but this is where I'm going to begin. If you can understand, set your small self aside, set aside the attachments we have to the things of the world, and it is hard and it is difficult to do. But we need to sit with spirit in spirit to really grasp this. When we are resonating at the level of love, and I'm just going to use that as our example, the level of love being an energetic vibration which has a value on an energetic level. So if love is at this level, and anything that is vibrating on that level is here also, everything that is perceived or that is possible to be perceived is in this level. If we were to drop down into lower levels, the things vibrating at this level would be completely unaware of us down here. Okay? The same is true of higher level beings. Let's imagine for a moment, or let's consider, not even imagine because it is true. So let's consider for a moment that there are angels, what we would consider angels, angelic types of entities around us all the time, always. It is true. They are. Energy is around us constantly in all different forms. We cannot perceive it with our eyes because our eyes are resonating at a vibration of mortal existence, which has its own vibration of existence. Okay? So these things are existing all around us, even at this moment, and we just cannot perceive them with our eyes. Okay? So I have even heard stories, and on the concept level, this is interesting, and it makes a good articulation for this subject. The story is that a person of high vibration, close to Christ consciousness, walks into a department store and goes about their business and the other people in the department store are resonating at a bit lower vibration, okay? A bit more 3D. That's a term that I use. It just means of the world, 3D. Really engrossed in the mire of the world, okay? And this higher vibrational person is walking around more in their Christedness and not really concerned with the 3D aspects of this mortal existence. And it is as if the people that are vibrating on that lower level they're not even aware of the other person who is vibrating at a higher level being in the room with them. I mean, a story even went into such detail as to say that when this person approached the cashier was looking right through the person, could not even perceive them standing in front of her for a moment. It took a moment and then some for the higher vibrational person to even come into her awareness. If we understand that that can happen, and again, I am not a physicist, I am sure that physics, quantum physics, would be able to explain this in a much better way than my overly simplified version. But in my overly simplified version, it is, as I have touched on in another video, wherever we are resonating on an energetic level, that affects everything that we perceive. It affects the world that we live in. It is truly as if we are each walking around in our own little bubble, creating our worlds as we go through our perceptions. So when I try to interact with someone who is not vibrating on the level that I am vibrating on, and not to say that they're higher or lower or whatever, but they're just not resonating in that same area, it becomes I realize that our interactions are going to be only of a certain context, okay? Because, okay, so I'm single again, and again have been single now for months, which is it is what it is. It is. Trying to connect with other people from where I am is difficult. Can I have a 3D conversation? I can. Do I want to? Probably not. Can I have a discussion about politics? I listen. I don't really want to get into it or engage in it, though, 9 months ago I did. But today I see the stories, and I see stories are just stories on both sides of everything. And so it becomes harder for us to cohabitate and mingle and things like that. And it all depends on where we are vibrating energetically. Where we are vibrating energetically is all about where we are. And there's not a right or wrong. This is not about judgment. There is not a right or wrong. There is not an I'm right and you're wrong, you're right and I'm wrong. It is this is where I am. It is. This is where I am. That is where someone else is. And so I have tried to explain to people that when you are resonating on the level of God, okay, if we imagine for a moment the one we think of as Christ, Christ is within each and every one of us. The Christ that was in the body of the man Jesus that ascended back to spirit, whatever that being, that individualized being is doing now. When we talk about the second coming of Christ, for a while now I've been saying I just don't think it's possible for Christ to return, Christ as we know Christ, to return in human form, because I do not think the body could hold that energy. I don't think the body would be able to hold that energy. I think it would have to be a specialized body or a light body or something to that effect, because I think if we imagine that, Jesus, when Christ was teaching and Jesus was the Christ in that moment, resonating on this level, I think now probably they're several octaves above yet. And I just don't see how they could come into human form. Maybe a form that resembles human, right? But not a body like this one that I'm in. It's just not, okay? And then to understand too, that from spirit, what we are as spirit descends in consciousness levels, descends in energetic levels, down, 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 in order to materialize this, okay? And so we, in this form, in order to stay grounded in this form, have come down in the energetic octaves. God being way, way out of the universal range of where we are, okay? And it's in God's energetic frequency. What is going on down here? And I have said many times, spirit does not care. Why do I say that? Because to spirit, nothing is happening here. This is a dream that isn't real. Everything that happens is happening in God. But if it is not happening at the vibration of love, it's not real. It's not existing. It's just not. It's not. The only things that are real are the things that we take with us. We are in lesson here, and so there is learning to be achieved, for sure. Cannot be here and not be learning something. There'd be no reason to be here. And that's the point. The point is that everything we perceive, we have assigned labels to it as bad, good, beautiful, ugly, pleasant, unpleasant. Okay, these are all labels that we as mortals have given to things. That is a judgment system. Pain is considered pain. by the mortal mind. In spirit, pain is nothing more than a sensation of the body, if we can understand on that level. There are sensations that are occurring within the body. We are the ones that are giving it the value of pain or enjoyment, pleasant feeling, okay? And so when we talk about God, God cannot perceive of the ills we think are happening. So when we think of the compassion of God, we must understand that God is love. Therefore, God only knows love. So from this state, we also see that God only knows love. So when God sees her, God's children, you and me, the divine essence of love that we are as God's children, when God views us, he sees us as the perfect being that was created from him. And I'm sorry, I'm using the patriarchal term him because it's just easier for me in this moment. So, and I have told you many times, God is masculine, feminine, perfectly balanced. There is not one more than the other. Perfect attributes of all, perfectly balanced. So when God sees me, God only sees the perfectly divine essence of love that I am. God does not see the things that I see as immortal, that I am judging or assigning values to, because none of that is real in the grand scheme of spiritual sense. Those other things do not exist, okay? They are utilized here for our lessons. Those labels are utilized here to teach us something. So once we have graduated to the point where our eyes see only the lessons playing out, not the judgment we place or the labels we place or the values we place on those lessons. They are just lessons. It doesn't mean that we stop helping each other. It does not mean that. I'm going to share with you just a story that happened today. I've been working with children. Child was injured, fell down, cut his head. The child then, after he had been cared for by other people in the building, came to me in the room I was in with other children, and he was quite shaken, and he was crying, not really crying hard, but kind of softly crying to himself, and he was very disturbed by what had occurred. There had been blood, and quite a significant amount of it, and any of you that have ever had a cut on your head, you know that they bleed terribly. So there was a lot of blood for what was not a really massive injury, but it bled a lot. So this small child, when he came to the room where I was, I held him and I tucked his face into my chest and just kind of rocked him. And one of the other teachers said to him, "Hey," from across the room at one moment when he was sitting by himself, you're okay, because he was still softly crying to himself after he left me, and I had been holding him for quite some time. And I got up from where I was sitting and I walked to him again, and to her I said, "His clothes are covered in his blood." And I comfort him, and he begins to feel better until he sees the blood on his clothes. And once he sees the blood on his clothes, it brings that moment right back to him, and he relives it again. So he keeps reliving this fear because he's having a visual reminder of it. And I told her, I said, this is very scary for a small child. Imagine, he's a small child. There's all this blood. It doesn't matter that he's not really in pain. He's seeing blood and it's scary for him. And his mom and dad aren't here. And so I had great compassion for this child. Not that I was going to cry with him, but that I reassured him and I held him. And every time he would start to whimper a little bit to himself, I'd walk over to him and I would kneel down to him. Again, I would get down on my knees and I would say, "You are okay." And I would put my arms around him and I would hug him. And then he would point to the blood on his pants. And so, you know, I just did a video about this yesterday, about how we keep bringing things from the past into this moment. And this small child showed it to me today in perfect form. How when we continue to remind ourselves, or we continue to have reminders of these things bringing into the moment, it destroys our peace and happiness. Okay? To God is always in the peace and happiness. God is always in the bliss, and the blood never happened. I'm hoping that you can hear what I'm saying and you can feel the message that I'm sending in this transmission. The blood never happened. In God, everything is happy, everything is peace, everything is love. Everything is that caress and that hug and that love that is emanating back and forth between two beings, and the blood never happened. I hope that you can start to unravel some of these things, because this very, very important point helps us to view the whole world in a different way. Everything about the experiences we are having, we view then in a different way. We have to also continue to remind ourselves when we begin to lament the past. And I have done talks on this too, where we cling to the grave was something that I read from biblical text from the Bible at one point. And the message that I got from that was that there is danger in clinging to the grave. When we lay a body down and our loved one moves on to the next experience, we must be careful how we perceive that happening. Once we know ourselves as the love of God, because that is what we are. We are the love of God that was birthed into existence, not this body, what I really am, what you really are. In totality, is the love of God, an aspect that was given individuality, that was blessed with individuality. It's really incredible when you realize how magnificent we are. So, when we see through the eyes of Christ, we see with a expanded vision of understanding. Okay? From that place, we are also able to, as I did with this child today, I am able to see what is going on with him. I am able to see in that moment that the blood on his clothes, that reminder is bringing him back to trauma, back to trauma, back to trauma, over and over and over again. As I told the other teacher in the room with me, and I said, once he is cleaned and his clothes are changed, and this visual reminder is gone, he will be better. And it really is that simple. So, but so I'm going to use this as an example too. As I said in this video, I am single, okay? When my ex and I split, there was a time when I had hoped that we would come to reconciliation, that we would both choose to work on this together and be together, because I had not yet accepted the errors in my vision. I had seen him for the person that I wanted him to be and not who he was showing me he was. And so I wanted the person that I thought he was, that I wanted him to be. That's who I wanted. And until I accepted that that's not who he is today, and may never be in this life, I don't know, I was still hoping for reconciliation, because I still wanted to cling to the idea of the man I thought he was, the man I wanted him to be, okay? Once that was gone, once I had accepted that reconciliation was not going to happen, and it didn't happen immediately. I mean, there were things that occurred. There were really, really deciding moments that came up during our separation that I just couldn't deny anymore my own error. I couldn't deny anymore that who he was showing me was not who I needed in my life, who I wanted in my life. And so once I came to accept that he was not who I wanted in my life as a partner, I put away all of our pictures, and I put everything away. Up until that time, I had still kept some of our pictures out. Once I had accepted that there wasn't going to be a going back there, I put the pictures away, because why would I keep them out to remind myself of something that was painful? And there I use the word painful. And it will be painful on some level until I completely am able to see it as it truly is. The lessons that it is. The benefit that has come from that time. Once I am completely cleared of any attachment to any of it, attachment to a loss or a feeling of loss, or, I'm sure any of you watching this know what it is to have broken up a relationship, or to no longer be in a relationship with someone that you once had, whether it's a family member or a romantic partner or whatever. All kinds of things hang on. But once true acceptance and true vision has come into it, what I think is painful now will not have any feeling of pain. It will just be something that occurred that I can view with love and compassion. So, because that's what God is. God is love. Therefore, God cannot see anything else. And so and I'm going to say this too for my friends who, I can't tell you how many times I see, I am a God-fearing man. There is nothing to fear from God. There is nothing to fear from God, because God sees us only as the divine love that we are in our perfect form. The things that seem to be unpleasant around us are things of our own creation. Our own creation. God had nothing in it. All this is happening within God, but God cannot perceive of the things that are not love. God cannot perceive of what we would call sin. God does not perceive of sin because to God it doesn't exist. All that exists is love. The only things that are real about you and me are how we were created by God, in God, our divine love. Nothing else is real. Every judgment, every label, everything, every value we place on anything in this world is only the value that we place on it. God has no and that is why when bad things happen, it's not coming from God, because bad is a label. It is a judgment that we are placing on an event, on a happening. Okay? This is a really key point. A Course in Miracles, the workbook lessons start out much more gently than what I'm delivering right now, by saying things like, this chair, this, you go through exercises and you say, this book, this body, this light has no meaning, has no value. And then another lesson will say, it only has the value that I give it. It only has the value that I give it, because that is true. To God, it is nothing. It does not exist. It never happened. The blood never happened. Okay. I'm going to read on just a little bit. Reverse this thought and see if it makes any more sense than it did before. In this scenario, a benevolent and loving God who has extended his being into the creation of the universe has somehow managed to extend what is not of him, to create what is unlike to his being in every way. Would even you attempt such a folly? Would you conceive of the inconceivable? The Creator creates like itself. You and I, what we really are, is a divine creation of the divine. The other stuff is not created of God. The ego, the mind, has created those things within an illusion that is all occurring in God, because God is everything. Okay? And so this is the best way I can deliver it today. We'll go on just a little bit. The Creator creates like itself. The Creator cannot create anything that is unlike itself. And this is why we have for so long not known God as God. Because we've been trying to give God credit for creating these things that we believe are real. It's just not. The blood never happened. Okay? So, what answer then is left but that you do not see reality for what it is? This is very important. What benefit is left to you in seeing incorrectly? Very important questions, okay? What risk in attempting to see anew? What would a world without misery be but heaven? All right. If we take away the labels of bad, if we take away the label of pain, what is left? You have an experience within the body. You have a sensation within the body. We have now taken away the emotional value we have placed there. Okay? Why is this so dangerous? Because the ego, the world, the mind in the world needs to keep us in that label system, in that judgment position. Otherwise, heaven is here. Otherwise, we are love in heaven now. Okay. What benefit is left to you seeing incorrectly? And the benefit is that the ego gets to live another day. The ego isn't bad, okay? Because again, if we go and assign bad to the ego, we are reinstilling more of the same. The ego isn't bad, but it is a way of pointing to something. It is a way of explaining it that we might be able to begin to see what is really happening. All right? The truth is, integration of all of these things is necessary. Integration of viewing the label system, viewing what we once had labeled as bad, good, right, wrong, this, that, or the other, and seeing it from a Christed place, from peace, love, and harmony. When all we know is peace, love, and harmony, we experience peace, love, and harmony, okay? Look not to figures from the past to show you the way, beyond illusions to the present. Look within to the one in you who knows the way. Christ is within you, and you rest within God. I vowed to never leave you, and to never leave you comfortless. The Holy Spirit has brought what comfort you would accept to your troubled mind. Now turn to me to comfort your troubled heart. Okay, so we're already 37 minutes in. I apologize for going so long into this one. I'm going to pop off really quick because it's going to take 5 hours to upload this video. So I hope that some of that makes sense to you. And in peace and love, may you be blessed.